Good evening. My name is Russell Withers, and the topic I am presenting on today is UAV market enhancement. And for some of you that may not be familiar with what UAV stands for, it stands for Unmanned Air Vehicle. So, in other words, drones. For this presentation, I have a list of topics here. So, first one we'll go over is a kind of a brief history of how drones started. Second would be removing the human element, the whole purpose of drones. Three is commercial versus recreational use. So that's the difference between flying, make money, and flying for fun. Next will be rules and regulations. Fifth, we're going to talk a little bit about Amazon delivery. And lastly, we'll finish it up with privacy and security. So for the history, what was the first drone? So this was kind of interesting. The first modern drone was invented in 1935 by the United Kingdom to be used by their Royal Air Force. So the whole purpose of this drone, funny enough, was to be nothing more than a target. They were needing to train pilots to get more familiar with combat situations. So they needed moving targets to simulate, dogfights. So in order to, keep pilots safe and everything, you can't have a pilot getting flown around shot at. They decided to create the Queen Bee. So here's a picture attached of the Queen Bee aircraft, which, it says was used as a low-cost radio-controlled drone developed for aerial target practice. Um, Interesting enough, there was a U.S. admiral that did see the Queen Bee in action, getting shot at. Um, After the U.S. Admiral William Stanley saw the Queen Bee in action and appointed Lieutenant Commander Farney in charge of developing a similar program in the United States. So they always say this was kind of the start of drones. But funny enough, kind of following suit with the whole Queen Bee, that's how drones got its name. Because the worker bees are referred to as drones. And also a drone, is kind of mindless without the operator, so without the UAV pilot itself. So got some interesting facts. Next, we'll kind of discuss a little bit about removing the human element and the whole purpose for UAVs. So UAVs remove the human element from the aircraft, which in some cases can make the whole operation safer. It's easier to repair or replace a drone instead of a pilot. Um, you know, I've crashed my drones before. Usually it's anywhere from a repair of maybe some cheap props to broken arm. I haven't really had to spend too much, luckily, anywhere from $5 to up to 40, $50, depending on the drone itself, versus having to replace a whole pilot. So it definitely can make things safer and more cost effective, especially when you're flying in very high risk situations. So, kind of as it says, drones were created with the idea of making a task easier to accomplish without the need of direct human interaction. And funny enough, drones are able to fit into a lot smaller places, a little bit tighter, more urban areas to do surveying projects. So there has been market research done, and just drone survey market has reached a valuation of $1.3 billion, which is crazy to think of, especially with it being a relatively new industry and really is still trying to take off. So next, we're talking a little bit about commercial versus recreational use. So yeah, prices can range from $40, your cheap little Holy Stone drones that are not the greatest to control, up to drones that can be anywhere from $500,000, depending on what comes with the drone, how capable it is. But that being the case, there's pretty much a drone that can fit everyone's budget. The biggest thing for commercial versus recreational use, though, is certification. So any UAV operator, they have to be certified through the FAA. Most commonly, is that Part 107 that I'm sure many of you have heard about. Anytime you receive any type of financial compensation for any work performed, you have to be certified. If not, then it's illegal. Recreational flyers, on the other hand, people just flying for fun. They don't need to be certified in any type of way, but they still need to abide by the rules. There's no, oh, I didn't know this. I'm so sorry. Nope. FAA does not care. You still have to know the rules. There are free programs, trust certificate that does help recreational flyers understand the rules and regulations that are surrounding drone operations, but they don't have to be certified, but they still can get in trouble. So next, talking about those rules and regulations. So right now, one of the largest barriers manufacturers and drone pilots are currently working with in the United States is remote ID. Remote ID is something new that's just recently been released, and it is now in effect. The FAA is currently mandating remote ID for drones now. So what is remote ID though? Remote ID is the ability of a drone in flight to provide identification and location information that can be received by other parties through a broadcast signal. So you have to have a broadcast a remote ID module broadcasting the signal out. So what the FAA has said is that remote ID helps the FAA, law enforcement, and other federal agencies locate the control station when a drone appears to be flying in an unsafe manner or whether excuse me, or where it is not allowed to fly. So this can cause some issues because not only are the FAA and law enforcement able to see it, but anyone is able to see it. There are multiple apps you can even download on your phone that, regular people that aren't even drone operators that they can download on their phone, and they can see aircraft that are broadcasting remote ID. Where this comes into an issue is those same people are able to, download the app, view for drones that are broadcasting, and find the location of that UAV operator, and they could rob him, they could attack him. Who knows what could happen? So it can lead to a little bit of danger, and that's why people are not too thrilled about remote ID. Now, remote ID isn't going to affect everyone, but it will affect some. So those that are flying commercially, so if anyone's flying under the Part 107 and receiving compensation, they have to have remote ID broadcasting. If the drone is being flown recreationally, though, there are some ways around it. If the drone is being flown recreational and it's under 250 grams, you do not need remote ID. If it's above 250 grams, you may need remote ID. It depends on where you're flying the drone. If you're flying the drone in what's referred to as a FRIA, so that's an area that's been designated by the FAA to be used for flying, then it does not need remote ID. But if your drone is over 250 grams, you're flying outside of FRIA, it's got to have remote ID, unfortunately. So there's some ways around it, and that's kind of why DJI has actually released their whole pushing their mini series a lot, I should say, because they're marketed to be at 249 grams. So just under that threshold. um, Another thing as well is in regards for rules and regulations, that is flying beyond visual line of sight. So it is possible to fly beyond visual line of sight without any visual observers, but it's a difficult process to attain in order to operate a drone beyond the line of visual sight. The FAA requires operators to obtain a Part 107 beyond visual line of sight waiver. So in order to do that, you have to have your Part 107, you have to submit a waiver. And what this means is, you can lose sight of the drone and continue flying. You can fly beyond what you can see. Because currently right now you have to maintain positive eye contact of the drone or have someone else that you're communicating with have eyes on the drone as well. Or if you're flying FPV and you're using goggles that transmits the signal out, they are saying that you can use that now. They've just recently kind of changed that ruling a little bit. But at the same time, it kind of depends on how the FAA wants to enforce it. It's ultimately up to them. They've said it. I don't know if I truly believe it though. Next, we're going to talk a little bit about Amazon delivery. So Amazon Prime has been known for 2-day delivery and cheap prices, but now they are wanting to make things even faster using UAVs to accomplish the task. This has been a project for Amazon that was announced in 2013, saying that they will once they have all the regulations sorted out, it'll be operational in 2015. Thing is, it's 2024 and they are still struggling with it. Um, they've started to do it a little bit, but they've been having to give out items for free, and they're very limited on what they can deliver, considering the picture attached shows that they drop it on a concrete driveway from about 12 feet up. So they can't deliver anything fragile. It's mostly stuff like cans of soup, jars of peanut butter. Not really effective. There's a lot more effective ways they could go about doing this. And lastly, we'll talk about privacy and security here for a little bit. So with drones fitting in the palm of your hand, um, all the way up to the size of passenger aircraft, they're able to fly in almost any location, which some people may think that they're being spied on, regardless whether or not they are or not. Now, flying a drone over someone's house, making it seem like you are, creeping on them is not okay. That is never okay. But the airspace surrounding people's houses is not their own private property. That airspace belongs to FAA. So that's something people are unfamiliar with, and that's what's raising a lot of issues right now when it comes to privacy and drones. Also, the US government is worried about foreign manufactured drones leaking US consumers' data to different countries as well. There's a whole fiasco with DJI where they tried to place a ban on DJI for a moment, but it sounds like it's been resolved now. The US government's still not too keen to DJI, unfortunately. But drones are fantastic for security when, placed in dangerous situations or you can't normally have a police officer or other human interactions operate in that vicinity. Drones are able to remove that human element again and provide for much safer operations. Thank you for listening to my presentation. This is just my list of references. Have a great day.